Nacho Average TableTalk. Woohoo!
Welcome back to Nacho Average TableTalk. I'm Zach,
And I'm Pepper.
and this table talk, Nacho Average Table Talk, we're going to talk about what we like to see in a review, and just kind of talk about some things, yeah, about reviews or that we've seen in some reviews that we may like, may not like. So we'd love to hear your comments below. Let us know what you like in reviews, what you don't like. I think probably while we're going through it, we'll mention kind of what we do and our reviews and first impressions, which are done slightly differently from each other. But uh, yeah, we'll probably go through that. But otherwise, we'll just kind of talk about what comes to mind. Ramble, 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 as we
Ramble,
are
ramble.
best at.
Yes, someone stole the a better name for our channel about board game rambling, but uh, we make do.
We do, we do. But yeah, I think one of the biggest places you can go for reviews is Board Game Geek, and here you can kind of just see kind of an aggregate of a lot of people rating games potentially. Is Brass Birmingham currently is the number one rated game? Um, and yeah, I guess Pepper, what do you take from Board Game Geek and the ratings there? Because you can kind of go deeper into these ratings where you go into the game
Mhm.
and go into the ratings, and you can kind of read some that people left comments for. Otherwise, you kind of can just see the distribution of who gave it, how many people gave it a 10, how many gave it a 9, 8, 7, all the way down to 1. And you can kind of see that over on the right there. You can read through comments. I guess, what do you think of that as a general thing? Not necessarily knowing who the people are that are rating it, what their tastes are. How helpful is it?
Yeah, I think the number is slightly helpful because if something comes out with like maybe a five or under, I'm usually a little more wary to get the game. But I think my numbers usually tend to be a little higher. I'm a little nicer in my ratings, or maybe I just enjoy games more than most. But like if I see something a six and it'll be one of my favorite games of all time. And I'm like, how is that only like a six? That's got to be like up to an eight or something. But I mean, an eight is really good on Board Game Geek. So you have to go into it kind of knowing that it's everybody's thoughts to really get an idea of what a good number is. And once you do that, I think it's decently helpful to kind of weed out I guess, the worst of the bunch for me. But really deciding if it's a game that I'm going to want to get, whether it's a six, seven, or eight, probably doesn't really affect me.
Yeah, I think I would agree on that. I think once it at least has, typically I look for hopefully about 1,000 ratings, I think, is when it
Yeah.
you kind of get a pretty good average. Anything less than that, it can still be good. It's still helpful to see what kind of some of the first thoughts are. If it's got only 100 or 200 reviews, and it's maybe early on in its life, still can be helpful, but maybe not as meaningful as something that has like Brass and Pandemic. They're almost 50,000 each. That's pretty helpful, but then at the same time, I'm guessing they do have criteria. If you look at kind of the star ratings as to what they mean, they do have like little like lines of what exactly that number means. I think I don't know where you can go into it here. It is here somewhere though. Uh,
Yeah, I
I don't
mine's
remember
one
exactly where it
too
says it,
much.
but I know they do have kind of what a five would mean, what a six would mean. Um, if you go into edit,
I guess, yeah, there. So I guess if
oh
I
yeah, you
hover on
can't
it,
remember.
I can see it. Uh,
Yep.
but yeah,
But yeah. So assuming everyone's actually reading that and using that, because I would say I myself do not read that before I rate something. It's just kind of more of my personal feeling, gut feeling of what that is. That can kind of be a little unhelpful because I may be thinking a 9 is just a really great game, but
mm,
there may be saying, yeah, it's saying we'll always play or something. Um, it probably would meet that requirement. When you get up there, it probably meets that, but kind of maybe in
Yeah.
more that middle ground, five, six, seven, the difference between
Yeah.
those, which I think could be very helpful. Uh, I think that's where I tend to, if I liked it enough, I'll usually just be generous and give it the seven if it wasn't
Yeah.
like anything terrible.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that that would actually fit their criteria. So whether or not that's really helpful, but that's one person. I'm sure all these other people are following it exactly. So my vote doesn't cancel it out. But I think overall, it is very helpful in
Yeah.
getting at least a base idea of if a game is well received or not. But sometimes you got to do your extra research, especially if it really looks interesting to you or sounds interesting, just because sometimes you can have different thoughts. Because I think like one of the ones we played recently, Taka no Color, I think we both, outside of, if people played just that first one, I think there's kind of some different scenarios, so to say, in that game. The first one probably wasn't that great, but I think everything after that was pretty good. And I thought it was much better than a 5.6. Uh,
Yeah. As you can see,
Whereas 5.6 to me usually would mean, nope,
yeah.
I'm immediately off of it. But uh, but yeah, that kind of brings in another point of how important it is to know how many times people have played the game,
Yeah.
or if it has like I don't know if it's considered scenarios in this one or what you'd consider different boards, maps. Um,
Mm,
the later ones were much more interesting to me than that original one, so I could see if you only played it the one time and played with that first initial one, that probably wasn't that good of an
yeah.
experience. And it probably is closer then to the 5.6 rating.
Yeah.
But if you played it more, I think it does get, you know, closer to, yeah, that 7 rating for me as well.
Yeah.
But
I think, yeah, knowing a little bit of their experience with the game, if it seems like they had just a really bad experience, or yeah, definitely how many times they played it, especially for like campaign games or legacy games, kind of knowing how much of that they've actually been through versus just the first scenario. We have had kind of legacy games where maybe the second half isn't as great as the first half, where if you can get someone who has the full experience and you know they do, you can trust that review a lot more.
right. Yep. I would agree. But yeah, I think that in general is just nice to know sometimes how many times, even with a non-campaign game, how many times people have played games. I know some people kind of are like, if you don't play the game, like at least, I don't know, they throw out some number 10 times. I don't think you should be able to review it. I don't know if I agree with that.
I would say
I think
that's almost all our collection.
I think that especially if you like to get a lot of games, maybe you're someone that does like to only try a few games. Maybe you get a couple a year. Then sure, you'll probably get 10 plays of it in. I hope. I hope you
Yeah.
enjoy it that much. If you're limiting yourself to that, I hope they're some of your favorite games and you play them a lot. Uh, but I know for me, I find a lot of enjoyment in trying new ones all the time. So the thought of getting to 10 plays in a game, that's going to be like some of my either my favorite games or some short games that I really enjoy
Oh, yeah.
that make it just easy to get back to the table that many times.
Yeah. 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 And I think kind of with amount of plays, I can let someone know another thing that I like to hear. It's kind of not just their initial feelings on a game, but kind of if they think that will last and how much replay value it does have, or if this is something that's going to maybe get stale over time.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of going into what we do. We have, I think, one of our biggest things now is first impressions, just because uh, we do tend to just have a lot that we play at one time, and then usually put like an unboxing video of that game up at the same time. But occasionally we would have chippies where we tend to play them at least probably 5 times before. But the first impressions are usually after play or two. So I think we try to say what we think will happen over a longer period of time. Sometimes I think that can be a little bit tough, but
Yeah.
I think we attempt to do that. Sometimes I'm sure we forget, but I think that is part that I try to put in there. Like, is it going to be interesting in 7 plays, or is it going to feel pretty much like I played this game the same way 7 times? Um, try to get that feel. But sometimes I think that is difficult to do if
Yeah.
you did only play it once or twice. Sometimes depends on the game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And even if it does kind of feel the same, is that actually going to be a knock for the game, or is that a game that doesn't really need that?
Right. Because, yeah, like King Domino, I would say plays very similarly. But that is probably one of my most mentioned games on all of our videos, just because it is one that I just love to come back to. And I don't know, it's comfort food game for me. And yeah, even though one could argue very boring probably after 5 plays, because it's pretty much the hangover. Uh, I don't feel that way.
Yeah, yeah, you recommend it quite a bit. You compare a lot of games to it, and I think that's another thing that we probably do a lot in our videos. And I do like when a reviewer can kind of compare you or show you other games that are similar to the game that they are reviewing, and either feel or if mechanisms really similar, or just some sort of grasp of if you like this, you might like this, or if this doesn't quite seem your style, then you probably don't need this one either.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that in one as well. Uh, I feel like this Board Game Co. I think he does that at the end of
I
his
think
kind
so.
of review videos. I usually like that because I think he tends to do a couple as well. So like if a
Yeah,
game has maybe like two main mechanisms, he kind of tries to get one that fits each of those. So it can kind of give you, if you really liked this part or this part really sounds cool, but maybe this other part doesn't. Well, that really would be more maybe this game you'd really like that really focuses on that. I think that can be very helpful in determining, like, oh, I've never, heard of that game.
yeah,
I've heard of this new hotness that he's talking about in his review, but I haven't heard of this old one, and you could probably get it maybe cheaper depending on what it is. You
yeah,
know, yeah, I feel like I try to do that when I can think of something that
yeah,
kind of goes with that or feels similar.
yeah,
Sometimes it's harder than other times to find something that's similar, but
yeah,
um, I
yeah.
think
That's
usually
not.
you can come up with something that seems similar. There are very
Yeah.
few that feel like, wow, this is so unique that I've never felt anything like this before. It's not common for us at this point. I think we've played enough games that uh, it is tough to get just completely brand new unique. But
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But we don't have nearly as many different games played as some other reviewers, like a Tom
right,
Vassell or Board Game Co. So they're gonna have a lot more options to shoot you towards. But we try our best with our 400 unique games played.
that's true. I guess does Tom usually mention? I don't remember if he
He,
mentions them in
I
his
don't think he
reviews.
does. I don't think
So
he does, and he's got thousands and thousands of
yeah, I
games.
know. It makes me surprised that he doesn't mention like one or two at the end or something. Just because, yeah, he has a much wider knowledge than most
Yeah,
people would have on what's out there. But maybe when you have that many, it's very difficult. Maybe
yeah,
it
that's
probably
true.
becomes more and more difficult to be like, wait, was it that one that was
That's
similar, or
true.
was it something else?
Yeah,
I could see that.
yeah.
Let's see here. Ooh, Pepper, you told me you love your reviews to be very formal.
Yes, very formal. Black tie. No, the exact opposite. Very not formal. No, just be messing around. Now, obviously, I like some order in a review, but I do like it to be. I mean, and this is kind of more towards a personality, so I don't want to like attack different personalities. Some people just want to handle it in one way and handle it in another, but for me personally, I like a review where I can kind of get to know the person a little more and kind of see it from their perspective, and actually kind of apply that to kind of is this game going to be for me? And I think that helps when it's not overly formal, kind of a little more. We probably take it a little too far into the just random ramblings of board games. So
Probably.
somewhere in between that, I just like a little more personality, let that show from the reviewer and not just a robot telling you different things because that just doesn't feel as authentic. I'm like, oh, is this actually going to be the truth here? Is this just kind of given this game and they're just providing this review for a paycheck or something like that, and their heart isn't in it. Like to get to know the person.
Yeah, I would agree. There is something about that that makes it feel more authentic if they're willing to kind of go a little bit off the path sometimes. And uh, like you said, we probably get a little bit too far off the path, so it's probably not a great example. But yeah, somewhere in the middle of that, and just getting from point to point to point, and yep, that's it. That is my review of the game. But it is good to still have some structure of what you're doing, because kind of like in our reviews, our Chippy reviews, if you've ever watched any of our review videos, Chippy stands for uh, what does it stand for? Core mechanisms,
Board
history,
games, history, yep. Investment,
investment,
um, and
pre-
presentation.
presentation, preference, and it factor.
Yes.
So we kind of have that set up in that order.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have kind of different categories that we break things into and give them a score, and then kind of have things weighted in a certain way. So depending on if we gave, you know, core mechanisms a 9, that would, I think, be 20 some percent
Yeah.
of the final overall score. So I do like when they have those broken down, so like or have different sections to the review categories. Like to know a little bit about what they think about the theme and whether it kind of fits what's happening in the game, or if it's really kind of just pasted on in a way. I do
Yeah.
like to know that. Sometimes even if it is pasted on, if it's a unique theme, I like to know if they thought that felt like, oh, this feels a little bit different, even if maybe it
Yeah.
doesn't fully capture the mechanics or whatever. Um, and yeah, just like to know, their thoughts about gameplay, about their the mechanics themselves. It's interesting to know
Yeah.
production value of the
Oh, yeah.
game, or just production in general, whether they think it's a solid production, if it's kind of a little cheap feeling.
Yeah.
They can go
Yeah.
into that at all.
Yeah. I like making lists and ordering things. So I think just breaking it down into sections is just a really satisfying way for me. Especially like, yeah, something like production that some might not cover because that's not as important to them to have a section dedicated to that. Even if it's just a small little thing for a card game, telling you kind of what quality the cards are. I like mentioning that. I just love whenever they throw in those as many sections as possible, really. Uh,
Mhm.
like just kind of play time, what they think that's going to be, or player count. Player count is a big one. I guess that kind of brings us to another thing. We find that very important
Mhm.
because we do our play group doesn't really vary in size very often. It's usually two players is primarily what we play, either you and Michaela or you and me. Sometimes three or four, but it's usually when people are coming over, then we'll have to max out those player counts. But primarily, we do like to know if a game is good at two players.
Yeah. So yeah, getting a little background on when people play the game. Don't need to know all their plays, but if they thought it works well, especially at the two-player count, or sometimes if it is um, a party style game, maybe that it actually works really well at those higher player counts, or yeah, just any game in general. Um, but yeah, the biggest thing is definitely at a two-player count, and I'm sure there are people out there that one of their main focuses would be how is the solo mode. I don't
Oh,
know that
yep.
that's as big for us, maybe you a little bit more than me, but I think that is also an important thing. If I was more into solo games, I would be very interested to know how the solo mode plays, because typically it's not always played quite the same as the rest of the game.
Yeah.
So knowing that would be very important. But yeah, for us specifically, it's probably that two-player count. I'm sure for others, it's going to vary on what player count you typically play at, and knowing that it plays well at that and isn't, and maybe get a little bit of an idea of how that maybe affects game time sometimes,
Mhm.
where there are some, simultaneous games where it's like, well, if you play at two, play at four. it's about the same type of length. But yeah, for those where you're taking an individual turn at a time, you add two more players, and all of a sudden becomes a 3 hour game. So
Yeah,
knowing those things as well
yeah,
can be very helpful.
yeah, for sure.
What else did we have, Pepper?
What do we got? Oh yeah, had some explanation of gameplay, not just your thoughts on the game. I like this game, 10 out of 10. Some explanation of kind of what you're talking about, and that could be, I think, helped through kind of B-roll footage or pictures of the components, so that when you're talking about the things, you can actually see it and be like, oh, okay, I see what tokens they're talking about, and kind of how this player board is represented. And I think that that can really help visualize a game. I'm more of a visual learner, so it does help to actually see those, or at least some link to some sort of informational how to play something instead of just.
Hmm.
Sometimes I do just want to see what do they think, what is their final thought. I just want to see a number to at first, and then maybe dig into it deeper. But if I do want to dig into it deeper, I do want some explanation of how the game's played.
Hmm. Yeah, and that I think could even be whether or not you'd want to link them off to another person.
Yeah,
Playing through the game, explaining it, because yeah, I know we've done some playthroughs. We don't do that many, but it could be something that people find very helpful in making their final decisions. Is whether or not once they actually see how it plays, if that's something for them or not. Um, 'Cause, yeah, some games too are like group dependent, where it's like it might work for one group, and they'll be like, "Oh, everyone in our group loved it," and maybe there's some reason, some feeling at the table that they all had that maybe another group won't feel that same
yeah,
thing. I don't know.
yeah.
But that can also be very difficult to figure out even from watching gameplay and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think group dependency I think is a big thing as well. And if the reviewer can kind of recommend who it's for, instead of just saying, "Oh, this is great. This game is great for what it's doing." Like, what is it doing, and who is it actually geared towards? Is this a game that's going to be for very experienced, heavy Euro gamers, or is this for someone that's maybe a little newer to the hobby, or is this just for a group that likes to get wild and into their characters kind of thing, which would definitely not be our style, but I like it whenever they can kind of give some direction of who's going to enjoy this.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I think that it can be one of the biggest things is
Yeah,
yeah trying to uh, get the audience help them figure out their audience. Yeah, help their audience figure out whether or not that is for them, just based on kind of those groupings of yeah like games I tend to enjoy are medium to heavyweight Euro games. So yeah, saying yeah this one's probably not going to be one that if you've only ever played Ticket to Ride, you might not want to jump right into this specifically.
yeah,
Um, a game like I don't know On Mars or something, you probably don't want to hop right into that.
yeah,
But maybe you do. Maybe you do want to jump right into that. There's probably some people that have, but
yeah,
overall, I'm guessing most people won't want to take that big of a leap. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, making that clear.
yeah. Trying
And
not to like make assumptions of who you think's going to be watching the video, trying to give a recommendation for kind of everybody.
yeah, I think that can be the tough part too, especially uh, I know we're still a smaller channel, so it's like I have to always try to remember that it's very unlikely, probably, that some people that are going to be watching this video have watched our other videos, so it's not like they necessarily have a feeling of what, if I like this game that much, what that means necessarily. So, yeah, trying to remember to be like, well, this is the type of game I tend to like, so because it's, this and that. And so if you're a person that likes this or that, you
Yeah,
might be more likely to like this.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Yeah, I think those were kind of all the main points. Were they not, Pepper?
Let's see.
Oh boy, Pepper's got more,
You
maybe.
say number. I just like, I don't know if we mentioned it directly, but I like giving a number
Oh, yep.
rating, whether it's 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. That's just satisfying for me to have a number, even though you really don't have a gauge of what that number means for the person.
Mhm.
So either a number or kind of recommendation of just should you buy it, like a definitive answer for their thoughts on a game, not just their thoughts throughout, and you kind of can judge whether they would actually say to get it. I would like a definitive yes or no, get this game, especially if it's like in a series of games, like which one they would prefer, or if there's any like obvious comparisons, make a definitive choice between those um, to actually give me a final review thought.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. And I hadn't really thought about it, but it might even be a place to start and then go on to the review. So I don't know. Maybe in the future we might have to do it like that and give a rating right away and then go into. But I don't know. What do people think? If you've made it this far into the video, in the comments, let us know what you think about the score, that final score, and whether or not that's more of a starting place. Because I do personally also tend to like on the Dice Tower. I've watched the Dice Tower a lot, so I kind of know whose tastes I align with a little bit. So knowing their score on a specific game kind of helps me determine right off the bat, like, okay, I gave it this. Okay, this is gonna probably have a tough hill to climb to
Yeah.
be a game that I'm going to like, but
Yeah,
give me that
usually,
starting place. So I wonder if that should actually be a start versus where you
yeah, I
finish. I
mean,
don't know.
you want to keep people watching, but I know that almost every time I do skip or at least hover over the end to see the final scores, and then if they're good, go back and watch it. And sometimes
Right.
if they're terrible, go back and watch it. And in the middle somewhere, then it's just, do I have time to watch this? Yeah, that
That's
could be
true.
interesting. We shouldn't actually release this. We could be the only ones. We could have a monopoly on this kind of format for reviews. Number first.
That's true.
Could-
But once the Dice Tower starts to do it, you'll know. Everyone that watched this video will know where they got it, where they got that idea. But
It is
yeah, let it
nope. It is November 20th, 2024, right now.
exactly.
On to you.
Let us know in the comments below what you think of that. If you think that's more of a starting place and then you should explain it, or if you should explain and then get to that as an end.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know what people think. Uh, but yeah, otherwise, I think that's everything we've got for this. We've done some other Table Talk episodes if you want to go check those out. I think they'll be probably, this will be part of a playlist.
Yeah.
Pepper knows all these things,
Yeah, the
he
playlist
figures
will
them
be
all out.
linked in the description.
Sounds good. But otherwise, we hope to see you on those videos. And as always, don't forget to keep on nibbling on our content.